The Terry Lundgren Center for Retailing is a collaborative effort between academia and the retail industry. Thank you for watching, and welcome back. Please join us for part 2 of our series around the emerging workforce, presented by the Terry J. Lundgren Center for Retailing.
Yeah, I like what both of you have said here, and I also think it's really important to follow up. You've met them on Zoom, go meet them in person when you get the opportunity. You don't have to do it first day, but over time, just write down everybody that you have met on in your Zoom meetings, and then go find them and just say, I just wanted to introduce myself. We met on Zoom and I just wanted to meet you personally, and have like 1 or 2 things to say that would just recall the conversation, or ask them a question that you have been thinking about to them, and make that connection. It's really important to do that. I promise you, most people won't. Most people won't. I'm saying this like as if it's a teaching lesson. Most people won't. And the ones who do will be remembered. So take it upon yourselves to take that action. One of the things I'm interested in from the two of you is this, and you'll know this and I'll know this over time, is what you believe in today, what's important, versus how you will react to that 5 years from now. So let's talk about like, what's a deal breaker, Audrey? What's like, I'm not working for this company because
of, yes, I would say the things I've seen in companies that I would desire to work for compared to the ones I wouldn't. I really, really dislike when companies say they contribute to this cause, or they care about sustainability, and it's all words, and there's no data to back it up. There's no ethical practices put in place in order to back that up, and also prove to their consumer base that they are leaders or pioneering in that area. And so to me, it just seems very hypocritical. And I know I'm a value conscious consumer, but that also transcends anywhere I go. And if I sense that there is just a lack of value and inconsistency of value in the way the company treats their employees and the way they treat their manufacturers across the sea, then I have an issue with that. And I don't know if I could stand behind a company and represent a company that is not putting forth their best foot in that regard. So.
Yeah.
Ooh, there's a lot of things that I take my life values that transcend into what I look for in a company. And the main thing for me is DE&I and diversity, just because there is a time where there is not a lot of Black women or Black men, but especially Black women, of women in power. So anytime that I'm wanting to, or when I was actively looking for a company that I wanted to be with, I was like, what does their leadership look like? Because what a lot of companies will do is that they'll make their frontline workers diverse, but when it comes to the higher ups, that trend does not follow. And it only is at a certain stage. And so that's very important for me, because I personally don't want to be the first to do it. I think that it should already be something that has been done, because that makes it normal for everybody else. It's 2023. I personally don't feel like I should be the first young Black woman to do anything, to be honest with you. And so that is something that I look for, as well as how you treat your employees, especially in a time of adversity. If there is a problem that somebody is having with an employer, a manager of theirs, how does that company react to what's actually going on? Because a lot of the times, sometimes it'll be, we might let that worker go, or the actual problem does not get solved. And then that becomes a pattern. And that's very important to say, hey, you say that you don't stand for any type of discrimination, all these things that they even have on job applications. But when you get into that company and you see that's not this at all. Exactly. There's no inconsistency. And just like she said, there's no backing behind the words that you're saying. And so that's the most important thing, is that companies are putting their actual foot forward, because at the end of the day, I don't want to be a part of any company that is all talk, essentially.
Yeah, good answers. And on the diversity subject, I would just say you have every right to expect that. And I always say to young people when they're entering the workforce, you should be able by now, and I'll say that by now because this has been a topic for a long time now. You should be able to look up in the organization and see people who look like you. For all of us.
Exactly.
And I'll be perfectly honest with you, when I was interviewing for companies, I looked for people who look like me. And that people that I could see who were 35 years old and I was 21 and looking up and saying, could I be like that person? I like that person. I like their values. I like what they stand for. And could I accomplish what this person has accomplished, in 15 years from now or whatever time frame? And so I think that's important to be, because I put in a program and because of this very subject many years ago, but because I was saying, well, we have we embrace diversity. We've got a diverse organization. We've got a diverse workforce. How come I can't get them to the very highest levels? And people would say, well, we try, but we don't retain them, up to the senior levels. We got them to the vice president level. We can't get them to the more senior levels. And I said, well, why not? What are we gonna do differently? And so what we finally put in place was, I said, okay, here's the thing. Any job of the top 100 people that's in our company, I want a diverse candidate for every one of them. So I may not hire that diverse candidate, but you better let's put them in front of us. And by forcing that simple change in issue, shockingly, we were able to attract and retain, diverse candidates in the higher rankings. And so there are things that you can do to address it. And on the subject you started with, Audrey, about standing behind the words. Look at who wouldn't want to embrace, particularly, all of the socioeconomic subjects and the environmental issues and all. Who wouldn't want to? But in some cases, it's just hard. So you should challenge what they're actually doing and see that they're in fact indeed making progress on those subjects. And it's a fair, challenging question. Now here's a hard one for you too. So what if the company that doesn't meet your criteria says, yeah, but I'll give you an extra 10 grand if you work for me instead of that other company?
No.
I wouldn't take it.
All right, so now this is where I'm going to look 5 years from now. I'm going to ask you. Because my generation would say, 10 grand.
Which is valid. I appreciate you bringing up that point though. And in terms of what companies will stand for, it is too much, I agree with you, to cover all the whims and trends and initiatives of whatever is coming down the pipeline. But as far as, let's take just sustainability, for instance, and say, oh, we're a fashion company, but how are we maybe preserving, water conservation in the places that we're manufacturing our denim or things like that, And maybe it's just one thing. Like you can't do everything well, but if you're gonna pick something, do it well. And have data to back it up. And that's where I wanna be, because I'm like, oh, wow, this company really wants to make a difference, improving the lives of people, not just company or employees that work for them, but the people that are affected by where we are planting manufacturing plants, perhaps. And resources all should have access to, but a lot of resources are often monopolized. So I agree. To care about everything and do nothing about it, I couldn't work for a company like that. Stick to one thing.
And I think also, especially if that same company came to me 5 years down the line, I would just have to reassess, because a company is not going to do something perfect, because the people who are running that company are just that, they're people. And so I think that's very important to remember, is that you have billion-dollar companies, they can't always make changes overnight. It's impossible to make changes overnight, because these are things that you have to actively do and sustain, and it has to be consistent with that. And I think it's just important to see, are you at least trying? That is the main thing, because if I look at a company and I'm like, oh, I don't see me in that leadership board whatsoever, I think I'm good, I'm gonna pass, and they come back to me 5 years later and I'm like, okay, I see a couple of people who, might not look like me, but they're of a different race or ethnicity, and I would then consider them, because to me, you're making an effort and you're trying, and that's the most important thing. A lot of consumers and a lot of even job candidates are like, if you don't get this right on the first try, you're done. That's it. And I wouldn't say that that's necessarily fair. You can write them off in that moment, but if they come back around, I would say, why not? Especially if you've been able to see that there is a change that has been made, because a lot of companies will make changes and people don't know how to react if the change is publicized as well. And it's like, well, why do you have to publicize the change that we were asking for? And it's a big teeter-totter. So it's just like, well, you made the change. Are you going to follow through with it? I think that is the most important thing, because to say companies cannot change, I don't believe is true, especially given the fact I work for Victoria's Secret. And so there has been a lot of, hot commodity around that topic in that company, but I would not be a part of that organization if I didn't see that there was some change, and if I did not see myself. I can go into any Columbus or New York office, even the stores, and I see myself, I see my friends in leadership positions and frontline positions and mid-level positions, and I think that is the most important thing. And I think that that's also really important to take into consideration as well.
Yeah. I would like to add on to a recent interview I had with TTI at their corporate offices. For me too, it's not only what they look like that is important as well, but also just what they stand for. When I saw a panel of VPs, I was like, oh, there's men, there's women, there's people also of different races. And I'm like, okay, the common thread here is hard work ethic, resilience, creativity, drive. I'm like, that's me. I may not look exactly like you, but that's me. Yeah. I want to work with people like that who are going to spur me on to that. And that, to me, that's what excites me about building a career. It might not be, TTI is power tools, and I love fashion. People are like, what? So how does that work? I'm like, if you can sell power tools, you can sell anything. But again, it's not about what you're selling. It's about who you're doing it with and why you're doing it. You know what I mean? So those are things I think about too.
So final questions. What have we left off? What didn't I ask that we should talk about? Final questions.
How do you feel about working remote versus hybrid versus fully in person? Because I know that used to not be a thing whatsoever, again, given technology. But if you were still the CEO of Macy's and you were looking to hire somebody, and they asked, I want to be fully remote, how would you feel about that? Or what is your take, given that you were once working in a time where that was not an option?
Correct. And yet when I transitioned to my second chapter, which is working with multiple companies and advising and consulting, I worked 100% remote because it was during COVID. And so I wasn't used to that and learned how to do it. And so my answer to you is I'm going to have two answers. One is for myself, if I was the CEO, I'd be there full time. And the reason I would be there full time as a CEO is because I want to be available for anyone who needs me in person and wants to have a conversation every day. And so every work day, I want to be there, and I would be, but I would not hold my team to that standard. And I would go further to say, if it's a job that doesn't require interaction, in-person work, there may be a category. Technology or some area where you can just sit at home and do your work productively. And if that's what you choose and that's productive and I can measure the productivity and see that it's working, I have zero objection to that. But I also think about in the retail industry that if you're in the store, you have to be there live. Okay, you have to be there to interact with these consumers. And so I feel a little guilty being in the office where you don't have the same work, in-office standard that you have in the in-store environment.
Like in the field.
Yeah. And in the field, where you have to have those, live interactions. And so I've seen over time that some resentment build. People in factories, they have to be there because it's physical work, fulfillment centers. They have to be there, there. And so when you think about the corporate office, which is generally associated with the higher paid, positions, they don't wait. They have an option, but I don't have an option. So I think about that's on my mind. Yeah. So having said all that, all things considered, I think there will be a hybrid workforce for many for this next period of time, and I can't predict how long that will last. But I'm hoping that the Zoom generation is going to help us all be more productive. So that we're going to have lots of time in person, side by side, face to face, all those interactions. But we're going to benefit from having the extension of Zoom to give us optionality and to give us flexibility that many of us need and are asking for.
100%. Yeah.
Well, this has been a great conversation with both of you, and Audrey and Mira, you two are going to be outstanding adds to companies that you join. I'm very proud of you. Really proud that you came through the Lundgren Center, and that I'm sitting here, beaming with joy, having had this conversation and knowing how you two are going to have a great career ahead of you in whatever you end up doing, but certainly out of the box here. So congratulations. Nice to talk to you. And all best.
Thank you.
Thank you.